I want to start off with a story, a story about um, a barbershop. Now, this is a true story. It happened in 1970 in Midwest. Now, the barbershop was the family for a generation. And one son who had to graduate school came back. He used to come back off and on during the year. And when he came off and on, he, you know, he connected with the community. This was a barbershop where, on the weekends, families would come get their haircuts. Maybe the parents were getting haircuts. They were doing their shopping. People would gather. They get their coffee, they get their donuts, and they would gather. So this barbershop was kind of a community staple. So the son goes off to college and comes back one spring break, and he notices that the dad who's running the barbershop is just very quiet, almost depressed, just very withdrawn. So he asks his dad, he says, "Hey dad, what's going on? I just noticed like you're not yourself." And the dad said, I didn't want to alarm you, I didn't want to bother you with it, but we're going to go bankrupt. And I don't know how I'm going to do it because this has been in our family for 3 generations, and I might have to close this barber shop. So during this time across the United States, what was happening was they were some low cost cutting salons that were being opening up around the United States. And one of these shops had moved into town, which was offering $6 haircuts. You all know about that, supercuts, right? So the father explained to the dad, the father explained to the son that, look, I cannot keep up with the $6 haircuts. I've done the math, I've done the numbers. If I tap into my reserve, I'll probably only be able to sustain it for 30 days. So I don't know. I think I'm going to have to shut it down. So the son said, well, okay, there must be an answer to this problem. There must be an answer. Um, so while the son was away at college, he was studying some success principles. He was studying Napoleon Hill. Napoleon Hill was one of the authors who had written Think and Grow Rich. And he had studied that, and he was studying how to look at a current situation and problem and create new ideas or think outside the box. And that's what we're doing today. So I'm going to invite you to think outside the box, think outside the traditional ways of attracting a job and traditional ways of what you have been doing. So one of the principles he studied was masterminding. Now, masterminding was a way that you would bring a question to the table, and everybody around the table in a mastermind would source ideas for you. So the son invites the dad, says, "Hey, let's sit down and do this. Let's go into this questioning of how you can keep your barbershop open. And also, maybe you could, thrive and even grow your business." And the father's like, "There's no way. I have looked at every opportunity. I have looked at every angle. This is not going to happen for me. I've run the numbers. It's not possible." So the son responded, said, "Let's just sit and do this exercise. What are some ideas, Dad, that you can come up with?" So one idea that Dad came up is close the shop. So he writes close the shop. Then the son goes, "Okay, this is one idea. We can advertise." And the dad's thinking, "Yeah, I did advertise. And you know what? Nothing happened," because he was in that thinking of, this is the only solution is for me to shut it down. One of the principles in masterminding and as we are sourcing ideas is not to start rationalizing with the ideas that come up. Because what happens is when we start to rationalize it, we start to thwart ideas that are being sent to us. And so they start to write and they get into a rhythm. And about 20 minutes later, one idea pops out. And they execute on it. The son goes back to college, and a few weeks later, he calls his dad, and the dad sounds like excited. His dad has full energy, and he's like, oh my gosh. And he says, you know what? Things are so good. And the dad says, and the son says, well, tell me what happened. And he said, remember that idea that we popped out, we executed. Not only we have retained the clientele, we have grown 11% that we've ever done in the history of this business. Do you know what that idea was? The idea that popped out, which was unconventional, which was ingenious, was to put up a sign on top of the shop and said, we fix $6 haircuts. That was the idea. Now, why does this apply to you and why is it important? Because today I'm going to invite you to think outside the box. Think outside conventional ways of how you've been looking for jobs, right? Many of, it's traditional ways, looking on LinkedIn, headhunters, all of those are great. And I'm not saying they're not great, but today I'm going to expand you into thinking for new ideas for yourself. That's why it's important. So put in the chat. Number one, would you, if as you are thinking about it, would you have had the same thinking as the barber shop? Was to probably like shut it down. There's no way to, sustain this shop, because that was the mindset the owner had. I have to close it down. I cannot, sustain it. I cannot compete against $6 haircut, until he went into a new way of thinking, a new possibility.